The exhibition, the theme was about George Washington. I imagine that he will come back to this neighborhood and see how it has changed, because it bears his name and he lived in the area during the Revolutionary War. He stayed at the Morris-Jumel Mansion. And also, for example, for me, we just moved to the area recently, a few years ago, and I have been seeing everything with new eyes. So it was more or less me taking the role of George Washington going around the neighborhood. So it basically was his eyes, let's say. And even though we are familiar with many of the customs or traditions of other cultures, I'm from Mexico originally, and the neighborhood is mostly Dominican or Caribbean. So it's another culture. I mean, it's something very unusual for me. So I always like to go around observing things, and that's what I have been doing with my sketches and trying to place George Washington, looking at the food, looking at how the people, their clothes, the music, their tradition. For example, in his case, he used to go with a horse always. He was always on horse. So I'm using the horse like a sidekick for him. For example, in one scene, I have him going into the subway with his horse, because everybody now goes with their bikes or their strollers, their dogs. So I think he will be around. He would like to take his horse also. Here, the people call the bus La Guagua, which I still don't know. Nobody tells me what does it mean. Guagua. So for me, it's like Washington waiting for La Guagua. It's even playing with those words. So I create that kind of humorous imagery with contrast of the past with the present, and that's something I have done also in other body of work of mine, which is called Manhatitlan, in which I incorporate Mexican culture into New York, and it creates that kind of clash of, not clash, let's say like a contrast of different cultures when they intertwine one with another. So in the case of this exhibition, George Washington Revisits Washington Heights, is that interaction of the past with the present and the surprise that it will cause. So that's mostly my idea for this exhibition. For example, it will be a sketch, and then this will be the final work. I'm working mostly in digital form these days, which is also another way to make it more contemporary. I used watercolor sometimes, but not in this case. In this particular series, I wanted to do everything digital. So what I will exhibit are prints of my drawings after I add color, and part of also the look will be, they will have texts as if they were cartoons from the 19th century. And I go through a process of doing a lot of sketches. I have been taking sketches of George Washington and also sketches from the neighborhood. So it takes it's a long process, but at the end I have a lot of fun in doing that, and the reward is just sharing it with the community and seeing the reaction, and I look forward that it's a positive one or I guess also the idea that many students come to visit this historical mansion. It's also for me another way to reach to more audience, younger ones, and hopefully spark their imagination.
Do you think that George Washington, just in his regalia in contemporary Washington Heights, is just sort of funny all on its own?
Well, it would be in a way, but I guess it's, for example, for me it's funny to see how some teenagers dress around here. So it's always a contrast of maybe, I mean, it will be shocking to see somebody dressed like him these days. But at the same time, there are many fashion these days that are kind of they pop out right from the ordinary. So that's also another thing that I wonder if he will cause that sensation, or everybody will take it like, oh, another guy dressed like like a New Yorker.
Do you think that it's easy to make him humorous because he's sort of stoic, sort of portrayed as a strong and leader?
Basically, we know about George Washington based on a few paintings, and I guess all the imagery that has developed from those few paintings are what has been dictating our view of him. And of course, he was the first president. He was this general, and he was always, I guess, like a role model for everybody. So I'm very proper. I guess it was like the British tradition. He was, he grew up with that, and so I think he will be around in the same manner. I mean, he will be interacting with the locals, but I guess keeping his his how do you say, his manners. And that also creates a contrast to see somebody very proper in a neighborhood that is very relaxed, very festive, let's say. And so it's interesting. It's also, I have been learning a lot about his history and his personal life, and for example, I always thought he wore a wig, and he didn't. He only powdered his hair to have it white, like as it was used at that time. He had a lot of problems with his teeth, so in one of my images, he's going to the dental school or a college here at Columbia to be treated by that. So I'm using even those details to incorporate it into the neighborhood. The famous scene of him crossing the Delaware, in my case, I'm portraying him crossing the Hudson River, but in a car or in a limo. I mean, so that's how I've been playing with the past and the present. And as I said, oddly enough, the first time we live in New York City was in Washington Heights, almost more than 25 years ago. But basically, we were staying at the area where all the medical students were in Haven Avenue. So we never really interacted with the neighborhood, only until we moved now, which is like a full circle. After many years of going around New York City, we went back to the area where we started, and now this is like our new home, our new community, and I have been discovering many historical points of interest here, and a new life, a new community, and I have been enjoying that. So that's what I was bringing George Washington from the past to the present. In a way, for me, it's the same. It's coming from the past again to the present. And looking at this new neighborhood for me, with new eyes.
Have you seen any parallels between George Washington and his relationship with his wife, and you and your relationship with your wife?
That's interesting, because that's an area that I haven't explored much, his relation with his wife. All I know is that he married a widow, right? She was a widow, very wealthy, and that's it. I mean, but I am portraying her only in a couple of scenes here, because I'm not that part of his life. I'm not that familiar. In a sense, I mean, he had a long life with his wife. He had a good relationship. That's all I know, and that's what I have had with my wife. I mean, we have been together for many years, and we enjoy every moment that we share, and we share our ideas, we exchange ideas, we are each other's most fierce critic, let's say. because we go through the process of showing each other's work and then giving our opinions, but we know it has good there is always something good coming out of this feedback that we give to each other. So we have worked as a team for mostly all of our lives that we have been together, and we enjoy that. I mean, I really enjoy that opinion. She's my wife and like my best friend. So it's I imagine George Washington probably had the same with Martha, especially since he was in a really tough position, right? I mean, the Revolutionary War created a nation. I mean, you really need a good partner to help you go through that, I guess.
How have the two of you collaborated together on your work? Obviously, your work is very different than your wife's, but what kind of discussions have you had about what you wanted to do at the museum?
The museum, we got the invitation from them because we collaborated in the past with in another exhibition, and that's what basically originated the idea. And since we both have very different works, but they can be complemented, that's how I envision that. It's a joint collaboration, but not necessarily showing the same kind of work. We offer two different views, let's say, of art. And her work, I mean, she likes women, she likes to portray women, she likes to celebrate them, and mine is always permeated with humor. So we have both things. Let's say, will be the spiritual side of her, or poetic, and mine the more relaxed, let's say, more fun stuff. So we always say we have a doses of high art and then popular art. So we kind of balance that, and we have collaborated in many exhibitions. Some of them were by accident at first, and then when we if we get the opportunity to do that, we do it. Why not? We say always, why not? It's as I said, we feel like we're part of a team, and I don't think one body of work takes from the other. I mean, it complements, as I said. So it's always, I always like that opportunity. So.